Welcome everybody back to episode number 12 of Off the Rails podcast with Tone and Jems. I'm Tone, that's Jems. And today we have a very special guest. We have former state trooper, stand-up comedian, host of many podcasts, including Guns Blazin, Here We Go, and 1041, the incredibly awesome Todd Mccomas. How's it going, Todd?
Great, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, no, thanks for coming.
You guys are all Detroited out right now.
That is true, yeah, unintentionally. So I think we might be the only two Lions fans in the world. So
well, this I'm going to date myself, but I was by proxy a Detroit Tigers fan just because I was a big fan of the old TV show Magnum PI, and Tom Selleck always wore the Detroit hat.
Yeah, that's what people say to me all the time too. Like they're like, oh, it's like you're from Michigan, or they're like, Tom Selleck, and
right.
Like, I'm like, there's a baseball team, I guess, but I mean, they're not very good. No, I one time I shaved. I was like 25. I shaved just the mustache, and I unintentionally just always had a Detroit hat on, and I got it a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that if you're gonna look like somebody, I mean, you don't want to look like him now because he's like 90, but. You know, back in the day, that guy was the coolest thing. He had the best mustache. He was statuesque, and then he was the first actor I saw like interacting with professional sports because he would go to spring training with the Tigers, and he would take BP, and he actually could hit. He's in the Little League Hall of Fame. Like, he was a really good baseball player. So I was like, that's why I loved him, because I loved baseball. You know, I loved to play baseball. And I'm like, this guy can really play, and he can fuck whoever he wants. Like, this is awesome. And he drives a Ferrari.
And flies a helicopter.
Yeah.
Tom Selleck, also great baseball movie. Mr. Baseball is a good baseball movie.
Well, I liked it because he could actually play. I hate baseball movies where they put people like in Major League, I don't know, the ancient guy who was somehow 83 and still able to pitch in the majors.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, come on, where you had Charlie Sheen, he could really play. He was good. Just cast somebody who has played at least high school baseball.
Which shouldn't be too hard to find, right? I mean,
you wouldn't think so.
You got to think at least a couple of those guys have done some of that stuff. That is actually interesting. So I know I did want to talk to you about baseball, but since you brought it up, and you are a former state trooper, is it the same when you watch like cop movies? Are you like, that would never happen? That's stupid.
All the time. But it doesn't keep me from loving them. I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time is Die Hard. And I mean, come on. The guy blew up an entire building and he didn't have to do any paperwork at all. Like, that's not how shit works, But so I love all of them, even if they're not realistic or if they are, And there aren't very many that really are realistic, but it's getting better now, I think, because a lot of these coppers are becoming Hollywood consultants, and they're getting paid really well to keep the movie realistic. Like True Detective, that series on HBO, it's like one of the best things I've ever seen that's cop-related. Like, somebody really put in some work to make sure shit was done right. And The Wire for sure was realistic.
Wire's great.
Yeah. Like, I worked with the group that The Wire was based on for 2 weeks. We had to, when I first got assigned to work the cell phone tracking truck, you had to go to school to learn how to operate the equipment. So you would drive around. Basically, once you knew a general area where the person was, you would just grid off that area, which might be like a 1,000 by 1,000, yard or meter area, and you would start gridding it off and driving around until the antenna on your truck would connect to the person's phone, and then you could hone in right on it. Well, the group that The Wire was based on, that group in Baltimore, their electronic surveillance unit, we went to ride with them for 2 weeks after we were trained to work with them and really see how it's how it applies on the street. So we were riding around in their cell phone tracking trucks, and when you're in Baltimore, like, you're not going after somebody who wrote a bad check. Like, it's, this guy murdered 4 people, yesterday, and there's every day they would lock up like 7-8 murderers a day. It was incredible.
I believe it. I've been to so my dad's ex-military, like 30 years, and they retired in Virginia Beach, and so like we'd go up to Baltimore Orioles games, and you're like, it's nice here. They're like, don't go like one more block, and then you're
stay around the stadiums. You're okay. You get much off of that. Watch out.
For sure.
The Orioles had those riots like 2 or 3 years ago in Baltimore that were really bad. The White Sox I'm a White Sox fan, and they had to play an empty. They were just practicing for 2020 apparently, but they played an empty stadium game like in the middle of the day.
Really?
You hear, like, riots in the background and stuff. Yeah,
I do remember that.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, sports has definitely changed. I know you're a huge Colts fan, Todd. Are they allowing fans this year? Or
yeah. They've been allowing a certain percentage, which I can only assume the majority of them are season ticket holders, and there's some kind of lottery or something done, to pick who gets to be there. But yeah, I think all season long we've had some people in the stands. What percentage it is to full capacity, I have no idea. But yeah,
that's got to be weird just to be like. I mean, especially probably you as like a comedian can understand. Like if you were playing something like that and there was like 10% capacity, you're like, hold on, like the room is too big for this. Like,
well, they're piping in crowd noise, like sometimes I wouldn't mind that when I'm on stage. Like if you could pop in some extra laughter, that'd be pretty cool. It might make me feel better.
You're like, this is it's a crowd of 100, but it sounds like
1,700.
That'd be awesome. Speaking of that, I always enjoy like when I speak to like performers. What's the biggest room you've played? Like, because you've played some decent size throughout.
Yeah, I played some big ones with Pat McAfee. Obviously, I think we were doing 3,000 seaters or something, 3,500, and then the first paid gig I ever did was in front of 5,500 people in a hockey arena. And it was a military. They only put me on it because there were no comics in our region hardly that were veterans, and it was only for military and their families. And it was called Operation Comedy, and it was near Christmas time, I think. So, man, they packed this place out, and I maybe had 10 or 12 minutes of comedy to my name, and it was short one-liner stuff. I was brand new, but they put me on it to open the show. And I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. But I went on to do a bunch of shows with them in front of big audiences. Not that big, but like big theaters and stuff. So it was different for me coming up in comedy because usually there's a transition people have to make between clubs and bar shows to working bigger shows like that in theaters and arenas because the delivery is different. When you have that many people and they laugh, the laugh takes forever to get through you and past you before you can speak again. So there's a lot more pausing, and your 6-minute set that you normally tell at a bar or in a club, you might only be able to get through like 3.5 minutes of that in a big show like that because there's just that when they laugh, you have to wait forever before you can step back in and talk again.
That's like my biggest fear, like because I do it to Jems all the time on this podcast, and I'm like working on. I speak so fast that I'm like, I would have a hard time just standing there and waiting for the.
People, older guys used to compliment me all the time on this my pregnant pauses on stage, even at clubs and bars, like because there is a way to command presence and control the crowd with silence, which it's like a advanced stage savvy move to do. So when you see someone doing that, they usually have been doing comedy for a while, but I hadn't been doing it for very long, but I was using that, but it wasn't on purpose. It was like, I'm just used to having to wait this long before I could start again. Because a lot of comedians are afraid of silence in the room, but silence is powerful if you use it correctly because anytime that you're not talking and you're just looking at the crowd and they're not talking, then that means you have them. Like they're interested. They're bought and paid for, and they're like waiting for the next thing. And I don't know. It's like it's like a real veteran kind of move. And the crowd subconsciously can feel it. They're like, man, this guy's really in control. Like this is his show. And it's a powerful tool to use. But you can't be an open micer and go up there and try to do it. They're going to be like, what the fuck? Will this guy start talking or what? You kind of have to have a presence, that commands respect.
Do you prefer doing the smaller shows like in a bar or a little venue, or do you like doing the big arenas?
My perfect show, I think, is a comedy club with about 150 people. Like that's perfect for me.
I saw you at the Tiger Room in I think it's the Tiger Room in Fort Wayne. Was that about 100 people in there?
Yeah, I think we held like 100, 110 people in there when it's full. And now that's any room that is full is great for a comedian. It could be a room that only holds 30 people, but if there's 30 people there and it's full, I mean, it always feels awesome because the room size, if you fill it, the laughter of 30 people can sound better than the laughter of 80 people in a 300 seat room. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because it's just, you can feel that laughter when it's full. When that room's full wall to wall, it creates this effect where you can just feel it in your soul when people laugh. But when it's like 2/3 empty, you feel that emptiness within the laugh. It's weird. It's a weird dynamic. So I think any comedian would tell you this. Like, even if it's a person like Pat McAfee, who every time could go out and do 5,000 seaters if he wanted to, or more now probably. If you put Pat into a room that only holds 30 people and it's full, he's still going to have a fun ass time. I mean,
might have a funner time.
Yeah, he might. He might. Yeah, and it feels more personal. I mean, when you're doing an arena or a giant theater, there's no one-on-one connection with individual people in the audience. And I like to do a lot of crowd work. I mean, of course, I wouldn't at a big show like that because it's more anonymous. The crowd's more anonymous to you, and you can't really see them because of the lighting. But I love a show where I can talk to the front 2 rows, individually in between me just telling my stories. And also, while I'm telling the stories, that I can make contact individually with almost everybody in the room, at least halfway back, depending on the lighting. But it feels more personal for them, feels more personal for me. And it's kind of like, we're all in this together. It's like a team sport. I need you, you need me.
It was either one of you or Sean's IG stories, or it might have been my buddy Duke, who was at your Aurora show.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might have been his Snap story. Sean had a drunk guy standing just lingering in front of the stage for a while. Yeah. Does that happen a lot, or was that just like a special experience there in Aurora?
Well, it was a special experience because it wasn't really like a comedy venue, right? It's like a music venue. So when we got there, and this place is really cool and nice, but it's meant for a fuck ton of people to be in there watching the game. They even have like a place where you could bet, to the side, like a little betting parlor, and ordering wings and just pounding beers and these giant ass TVs everywhere. And now this big stage is there because they will have like a Led Zeppelin cover band who was going to be there the next night after we left. That's what it's designed for. In fact, when we were there waiting to go on, there was line dancing in the upper level going on with this open balcony, and then they made them stop line dancing right before we went on stage. So those people were kind of like, well, what the fuck? We came here to line dance. What's going on down there? And they were kind of pissed about it, milling about. Like the first 15 minutes of my set, they were still up there, mumbling, probably cussing me amongst each other. And then once they settled down, it was great. But by the time Sean went up, people were drunk, and this guy had probably been there since noon. He was like a town regular. He probably didn't even come for the comedy show. He just goes there to get wasted every day to forget how much he hates his family. And then he just wandered up on stage and just stood there like he was enjoying himself, but he doesn't know how to behave in public, He's like, so he's just standing there, and he couldn't even speak. I went up to a microphone. I was like, well, let's get him involved in the show and let Sean tear him apart, And I held the microphone up, and he just wasn't even making words. So I was like, forget it. Yeah. But it doesn't happen you don't see that very often in like a room that has comedy regularly, because the staff, for one, polices the room. They'll kick people out, and people get used to it once they've been there a couple of times. They see a person get kicked out, they know not to do that. This place wasn't kicking people out, so.
I was gonna ask that because I've been to quite a few comedy shows, seeing Brandt and other people, and I know Brandt has mentioned before, from stage, somebody he'll have some interaction with somebody and they'll say something, maybe not crazy, but it's enough, and then someone will go talk to him, and he's like, "Hey, just leave them alone. They're fine. They're fine."
Yeah. Some of them are too sensitive. Yeah, some of them are too sensitive about it. And like I said, half of my act is interacting and just crowd rapping, like just in the moment talking to the crowd. And so I invite that a little bit. So you can't get too sensitive. I hate when clubs do that too, because then you make people just scared to let loose, But like if you're just, and it can get annoying sometimes. You have the heckler that we call the helper, and they're enjoying the hell out of the show. They love you, but they think somehow that if they comment after everything you say out loud, that they're making the show better for everyone else. So you might just kill with this killer punchline. The crowd's popping. As soon as the crowd starts coming down, they'll be like, yeah, like my grandpa. And you're like, nobody knows your grandpa, lady. That doesn't make any sense. You just...
It's like a motorcycle sidecar.
Yeah. So you're stepping on my laughs.
Like, what are you doing? But yeah, it's weird though, because like I actually, I think the last show I went to, it was the last show I went to see Brant a couple months ago. Some lady was like, it was two ladies at a table. They were like hammered drunk, and like he ended up bringing the one lady on stage and going through her purse and stuff, and but she just like, he was like, I'm gonna give you like your 2 minutes, and like, then you're going to chill out. But she just, she didn't understand. She thought she was helping the show. After the show, she was like, I'm sorry if I was just trying to help out. And he was like, and then like, after she like walked away, he was like, I don't know why people think they need to help out.
Yeah. I mean, that's the danger of involving them too much. Like sometimes it's better just to ignore them. And then after they do it 5 or 6 times, they're like, oh, I'm getting no reaction. I'm just going to sit here. Yeah.
Is it typically worse from like guys, like younger guys, or is it like the housewives that are finally getting out of the house that are having too many drinks for the first time in 6 months?
It's almost never younger guys. Like younger guys, it's like they know they're courteous, and then they know how to behave in public. They get out of the house a lot, right? So it's usually people my age, and they don't get out of the house very much. This may be the first comedy show they've ever been to, especially if you go to some place it's a little bit, and this is not a derogatory term because I am of hillbillies, but it's a little bit of a hillbilly area. This guy, he's got his Carhartts on, and but he's used to being the life of his own little parties, right? So he doesn't know how to not be that. So when he's at this show, he's like, oh yeah, no, I should be getting attention as well, and he'll start to do his own show from his table. Or it's the drunk older lady who is out for girls' night, and they're used to only being at the Olive Garden with their friends, or the Applebee's, where they can go crazy over their margaritas, and that's how they act when they're at the comedy show from their table.
I always find like those older ladies, like they almost like seem like they want to be comedians, like
for sure.
Like they're like some like boyfriend told them a long time ago, like, oh, that's funny, and like they were like, I should have been a comedian.
Yeah. Like they used to be hot as fuck when they were like 20. And they were like prom queen in their home little town, and they're a big deal when they go out to the local, dart league night at the Moose Lodge. But so they don't know how to not be the center of attention, and those are the people that usually are a problem.
I can totally understand that. The center of the attention thing it's wild for me, because like I enjoy, like I wouldn't say like I'm nowhere near funny enough. I know like Brant's like, oh, that's super funny. Like we'll have some, like, he's like, that you make some funny, like, I'm like, I can't do what you guys do. Like being on stage, I'd be like, okay. Like I performed as a musician, and like I had to perform like most of the time with my eyes closed, because I was just like, I know how to do this thing, but like I don't want to see the people.
I got a buddy who's a very good comedian, a headliner, and he still has the thing where when I first saw him, when I first started comedy, he was headlining, but a lot of times he would be at the mic, and he would keep the mic in the stand, and he would have his eyes closed as he talked. It was kind of part of his, like, he had kind of this stoner persona, and which wasn't fake. It was real, but he was hilarious. He's still hilarious. Now he doesn't do the eyes closed thing all the time now, but you can still catch it within his act. He's a bit anxious around crowds and people. Like some people are just that way, and that's how he deals with it. So when he gets to feeling that way on stage, gets a little bit of anxiety, he just closes his eyes for a while and tells some jokes, and it crushes every time, because of the way he delivers it, and then it just kind of brings him back, But I say anybody can do it. Is everybody going to be super successful at it? No, but even the best comedians, when they went on stage, like Bill Burr, I guarantee you, the first 3 months he was doing comedy, wasn't out there destroying. You know what I mean? There was awkwardness and not knowing the little tricks of the trade to look like you're comfortable up there. And so it's easier than you think to become okay at it, and I think it's way harder than people think to become really, really good at it.
Yeah, that's the thing I know. In speaking to I had another podcast where I had a few comedians. Do you know who Jeff Tice is?
Mm-hmm.
He's a Denver comedian. He does a lot of art for the Sklar brothers and stuff like that.
Right.
And I had him on, and we were talking, and it always fascinates me because I'm like, if I go do an open mic for music or something like that. I mean, technically I am a musician, but I'm not a musician. If I'm if this is my first time, I have toured, so it's that's different. But he's comedy is the only thing where you can be I'm a comedian, and all you have to do is put your name on a piece of paper, and
right.
You can join. You can be the same as Joe Rogan. He's
yeah, and it's different. Conversely, I know a few people that don't do comedy professionally per se. But they've been doing it a long time, and they just have a real kick-ass regular job, but they don't want to leave, so they do it pretty much just locally, and or maybe big cities around their area that's within easy driving distance, and they just kind of do it once a month or whatever. But they're so good. I have a buddy, Austin Reel. He was on my old podcast, Funtown. The guy is a monster stand-up comedian on stage, but he rarely does it for money or travels to do it. But he's been doing it for probably 10 years now, and he's fantastic. If he wanted to, he could be really, really great in this business. But, he runs his family's pipe fitting company. And makes a lot of money, and he's responsible for a lot of people and carrying on the family legacy, and he enjoys what he does. So he's like, I'm not going to go out and not have insurance and go through the struggle part of this. And he's, even though he's already good at it, there's still a struggle because you're not famous. And when you're not famous, it's hard to get booked, and it's hard to get paid, to make it worth your time. And he's like, why would I fuck with that?
Makes sense.
Do you try to bring him out with you sometimes? Do you always have an opener like Azaske, or I know you were Sean and Aurora, but are you like, Austin, come on?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried before. Now he's one of those, he won't travel during COVID, and neither would Jeff Oskey right now, so it limits me doing shows with them. But I never a lot of people want their opener to be newer and easier to follow, I guess, I want the opposite. I only take my buddies that headline, really. And if they're not headlining, they're probably on the cusp of almost being ready to headline, because I want the show to be better for everybody. And if you get to see two headliners, one doing 30 minutes and one doing 50 minutes, that's a better show than just, someone who's mediocre at comedy doing 30 minutes and then a headliner doing 50 minutes.
Well, it seems like, if you want somebody that's new or not as polished going before you, it kind of just seems like you're just trying to make yourself look better rather than
I mean, and I'm all for giving newer people opportunity, so it's like, well, we could bring that person, have them do a 5-minute guest set, or make them your MC if you want. But I prefer the two-man show where it's me and a buddy who could easily be headlining that room on their own. And they do 30 to 35 minutes up front, and then I do close to an hour behind them. And there's no let us get this new kid out of the way for the first 10 or 12 minutes, But if I'm at a comedy club, I respect that position exists because I was a person in that position, and it's awesome to get stage time in front of real crowds and, work on your shit. So it's not like I hate it, but if I have to book my own show and I'm going to the Tiger Room in Fort Wayne, I just want that to be the best show possible. In my opinion, that's a two-man show with basically two headliners. Yeah.
Do you do a lot of your own booking still, or are you using a booker? Or? Which do you prefer?
I definitely prefer someone else do the booking. It's a pain in the ass, like contacting venues and then, negotiating the deals and having to worry about all the little stuff. Like I don't have time for that, for one, but it's a pain in the ass. So I do have a booker now, a manager that handles all that. He's actually the road manager for the Impractical Jokers live tour. So
that's pretty neat.
Yeah, and he's owned a comedy club before. Like he's been in the booking business for a very long time. So he has a lot of connections, and it's easier. He knows how to deal with the contracts and all this stuff. And he manages the booking for Sean Latham now as well. So he'll book us together, and then separately, whatever makes the most sense for the event. Yeah.
Did you meet him through running Morty's? Like, did you make a lot of contacts with like people like that running Morty's, or were you kind of just talking to comedians one-on-one there?
I definitely knew of him from owning the comedy clubs before, because he would send people our way, that he represented. And then I also knew him as the booker for like Penguins Comedy Club in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and a couple other venues that I wanted to play. And it was weird because we have this kind of story between us now. Like I was always trying to get into Penguins for sure, and he would never book me. Like he's like, you're not going to sell any tickets, which made sense. I wasn't, but then he had sent some people he tried to get at Morty's or some of the other clubs that we owned at the time, and I'm like, So I don't think we ever successfully did a booking together before we started working together.
That's so weird. That's weird. I wanted to go back a little bit to the point. So like you were talking about having openers and you just want the best show possible. Like I was thinking some of the best like music concerts I've ever been to, like were concerts I look back on and I'm like the band that was like in the middle are the bigger headliner now than the headliner, and you're like, oh yeah, you just see them on the come up. So it's like it makes sense, and it makes for a more, I guess, like enjoyable experience on our side too.
Absolutely. Now in music, I don't know how much of that is that the feature act, the big band was trying to help this band out because they really liked them, or is it because they both work for the same label and the label's like, I need to get these guys ready because they're going to take off.
Yeah, it's probably more like that, but like just the experience of like you're like, oh, you show up and you're like, oh, I have this one experience where literally it was I grew up in Virginia Beach a little bit, like when I started to be able to drive and like go to concerts and not have my parents take me, and No Doubt was the headliner, Weezer was the middle, and Black Eyed Peas were the opener. You're like, that concert would never happen today because all those bands are headliners.
And everybody has a story like that.
Yeah.
If you're like country music, people will be like, yeah, I remember I went and saw Luke Combs open for blah, 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 and it's like, yeah, I mean, that's the beautiful thing about music is, and comedy, you don't see it as much. Like there's not a lot of stories of, well, there used to be back in the day, but in the contemporary world of comedy, you don't hear a lot of, oh, I remember when, let's say, I'm going blank. I remember when I saw Bill Burr open for Dave Chappelle. There wasn't a lot of that in the contemporary comedy because people don't challenge themselves by bringing up someone who's an awesome comedian. They just don't have that draw from fame or whatever, Definitely. And I'm like not a famous person, but I have some draw because of spending time with Pat McAfee and Barstool Sports. So I can draw from that audience. So a lot of times it's, yes, I can sell 200 tickets for this room myself. My buddy can't, but he may even be better than me. Sometimes the people I think are better comedians than I am. But I want my people to see them and follow them and help them from that point on, become fans and stay with them. Same way with podcast. Like I love bringing people on a podcast of mine, and then people get to know them and then love them and follow them. Like when I hosted Heartland Radio, we had Dan Cummins on for the very first time. And I already knew.
By the way, thank you for that podcast because I listened to it.
Right? Like half our audience became huge fans of Dan Cummins' podcast, which made me feel so good, and I think he was a little bit taken aback by it at first. He was just like, oh shit, I just thought I was helping out this guy that I liked. He didn't realize how big because that show was huge, especially then. That was in the first generation of Heartland Radio when we were still under Barstool Sports umbrella, and that was probably the biggest it had ever been. And he was taken aback by it, but then also I was like, wow, this feels really, really good because I am a fan of Dan Cummins. It wasn't just that we were kind of friends. I was like, this is one of my favorite comedians, and to introduce it to you guys, and for you guys to fall in love with him and now follow his content, I was like, this is what comedy and networking within comedy is all about. It's about, giving back and helping friends and helping people you think are worthy of it, And that's how I feel every time I go do a show. Like, I want people to meet my friend Bowers. He's hilarious,
That's what I love about podcasts, though, because with podcasts, I listen to quite a few of them. I just listen to hours and hours of podcasts, but I think some podcast hosts, and they'll say it, they'll be like, oh, we have a big guest. I'm sure we're going to get a bigger bump from this. And it's almost like you don't expect to get a bigger bump from the guest per se. People will tune in because they like you. And then you're almost doing the opposite, helping. You might get some of their fans that their diehards come in because they want to hear, but you're really it doesn't matter. If Bert Kreischer does a podcast with a comedian I don't even know of, I'm going to listen to it probably because I like Bert.
Right. You nailed it. It's the complete opposite. And when I hear people all the time think about, we got to start getting some big guests. We got to start getting famous guests. We had a bunch of them on Heartland Radio, and it didn't affect numbers one single bit. Dan Cummins had a following. It wasn't like half his audience came to our show after that and became fans. It's the opposite. If anything, your fans are, the guest is going to benefit if you have much of a following at all, because they might start listening to their podcast or going to see them do live shows. Gary Goldman was the same way. Gary Goldman was not a household name. He's starting to become that now. But he even made a joke at the last interview I had with him, and I think Pat was sitting in on it. He even remarked, he was like, at the end, he said, Ty, I just want to thank you because, you making me a regular part of the show back in the day and continually having me on. He's like, people show up to my shows now that are your listeners. They always reference. That's how they got to know me or whatever. And he goes, and I got to be honest, I never thought being your friend was going to be so financially rewarding. But thank you.
Right. It's weird though, because it's so true. It's it almost puts into the old saying, sort of treat everybody good, because you just never know who's going to help you out later on. You know what I mean? It's just, who just in general, who knows? Maybe someone listens to this that for some reason in, I don't know, Montana books the biggest comedy venue, and then they reach out to you. Who knows?
You never, that's my rule. You just don't shit on people. Just be a good person to everybody. For one, it's easier. It's an easier way to live. But two, in both their instances, they were huge juggernauts within comedy. They met me when I was just, newer in comedy, but they were just nice and cool and, hang out, and they were good to me. So when I did have something that could benefit them, they were the first people. I want to have them on, And I don't have that presence now. My podcasts now aren't going to get people the reaction that Heartland Radio, the OG Heartland Radio had. But still, it's there's, you might get some bump from it. There's 15,000 people listening. Out of that, if 200 people become fans of your podcast, that doesn't happen every day.
No, and that's the thing, is you just never know what group is gonna take you to that next level, and then that opens up even more doors, and then who knows where you walk in from that. And we call it the paperclip theory here. Me and Jems live by it, basically.
Yeah,
we're who knows? If we get the small. Have you ever heard of the paperclip to the house thing?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So basically the theory is I don't know where it originated, but basically someone traded a paper clip for a binder clip for something else. And they had a paper clip to start with, and everything they traded incrementally up little by little. And then eventually they got a house. They traded for a house. So they took a paper clip with no money and traded all the way to a house.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a stapler. Like
Well, I mean,
they end up
probably.
trading up to us like one of those automatic staplers. And you just shove the paper in and it does it on its own.
Yeah.
But a house is better.
I think we made it to the stapler by now.
Yeah.
Getting people to say yes to come talk to us.
So it's funny. So like, I'm like, and we're also just like, we're both podcast fans, and we're like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm not worried about getting no's. So I'm like, I'll send out like 50, like, hey, love what you do. Like, if you ever want to talk, cool, we'd love to have you on podcast. If one person comes back, you're like, sweet, that's a win.
I don't know why people like. I hear people all the time. They're like, oh, let me see how many ratings they have or how many reviews they have or whatever. I don't even know why that's. First of all, that's in no way a gauge if the show's good or not. You know what I mean? Like every show starts somewhere, and if you don't start, like I had podcasts before I ever met Pat McAfee.
Yeah.
And I didn't have very many people listening, but I thought they were very good. I had very funny people on it. But, not everybody gets to start under the Barstool Sports Podcast Network,
Yeah.
So it's in no way a barometer of are you going to have fun being a guest on that show or that it's going to be worth your time. I mean, first of all, I just like to have conversations with people. And I've not had conversation with you two before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something new. I don't want to go on the same old podcast all the time. It gets old. So that's refreshing and fun. And then again, yes, what if 6 years from now, you guys are in the top 50 of comedy podcasts or whatever, category you're in? Then you guys will be like, oh, yeah, he came on when, lots of other people wouldn't. So
that's our problem. We don't really have a category. Like we're in sports news, but like we've had an MTV VH1 VJ on. We had obviously Ryan on, so comedian. You're a comedian. We've had a musician on. We had 2 viral video sensations. So it's just like kind of all over. We just like having conversations.
Yeah, and I think you'll find plenty of people that are like that. I mean, some people are going to snub you. I get snubbed all the time from people. I reach out and like, hey, you want to come on here? And even people like that had been on Heartland Radio before. I can tell that they just did it because their publicist said you're doing it, because we had a booker and all that stuff. Because they in no way remember that they had a blast, first of all, and acted like we had become friends. So it happens all the time. But you know what? Fuck those people, in my opinion. If they're only doing it because their media tour, 2-week media tour that their publicist is making them do, if that's the only reason they came on, fuck them. Don't want them anyway, Well,
that's when you first dropped Here We Go, I don't know if I missed advertising before you were going to do it, but I was like, this is awesome because I like the 1041 format. And we kind of do, I mean, obviously you probably do it better than us, but like with Here We Go, like we just like talking to cool people. Or with Here We Go, you like talking to cool people. With Off the Rails, we like talking to cool people. So it's kind of like the same idea. And like, honestly, some of the people you've had on, I'm like, I'm going to shoot them a DM just because like, I thought their story was cool. Like Ron Sexton, I had no idea anything besides Donnie Baker. And then like Tone and I both grew up playing baseball into college a little bit. And at the end, when you're like, yeah, you're a fairly successful high school baseball coach, I was like, I got to talk to him.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's all about. I think it's and I did Here We Go was on a whim, to be honest. I had just ended 3 podcasts that I used to have pretty much simultaneously, and mostly it had to deal with getting ready for live stand-up comedy to start its return and touring. And I had this live Tiger King tour thing with the cast of Tiger King that's going to start happening. And then I have another true crime commitment that's a big deal that's happening in maybe March or April, where I'm going to have to spend a solid 4 to 6 weeks with this huge true crime podcast, which I'm happy about. And then all these things were coming down the pike, and I knew like time commitment wasn't fair to a lot of people. The one Funtown podcast, that was a great podcast. The numbers didn't match some of the others, which didn't make sense to me, but the people on it are phenomenal, hilarious, just great conversationalists, and I love doing it, but they had other things going on. They needed a break, That's something like I'm glad we did it because we might reconvene and do something in the future. But it got to a point where I had to drop some of these others just because Sean Latham and I were going to be joining forces and trying to build a career together. And that was going to be time intensive. So I dropped the others, and then I was like down to 2 podcasts, just Guns Blazin with Sean Latham, and then my true crime podcast, 1041. And I was like, okay, I'm down to 2. It's fine. But then I still had people reaching out to me, like wanting to be like, hey, can I come on your podcast? Or there was people that I knew that I wanted to have like in-depth, real conversations with. And I'm like, oh, shit. All right, you're not a cop, and you didn't used to be a member of the mafia, so you don't really fit into the 1041 format. And then Guns Blazin's more of a fuck around, silly, have a good time show with Sean and I. We will have guests, but it'll be in maybe a 15 or 20 minute appearance, and it's inserted in, you know. So because I went through this with the second generation of Heartland Radio, it got to the point where they liked the banter and the fun that the group had, and whenever I came in with a guest, they were like, fuck you guys. What are you doing? Go back to fucking around as a group, you know? We don't want to hear from this fucking person that survived a shark attack. So
I was like the opposite with that.
I know.
I was like, I liked the insertion of a guest in that scenario.
Yeah, I did
because
too.
I was like, it's still the banter back and forth. It's just with somebody who's not like normally there.
Right. So I kind of learned from because I love that people like you liked it, because I liked it a lot, obviously. But I learned from that to where when we have guests, we'll have them in a different format, like a shorter, and wrap them more into what Guns Blazin is about, which means you got to be a certain kind of guest, you know. And then I was like, I need a place where I can just have these cool conversations with people that I want to learn more about or that I'm really good friends with in a relaxed manner and not have to worry about any other shit. I need a podcast that's only that. So I had this For Life podcast feed that I had, you know, from doing with my ex-fiance. And I was like, I'll just take that feed, turn it into Here We Go. And it's been great. I mean, I love it. It's easy to do as long as you can get a guest. But at this point, I don't care if the guest has notoriety or not. So they're a little easier to get because they're either already friends or like Mark Weinstein from Fire Festival. He was easy to get because he's starting out in podcasting and he knew, oh, this would be good. I can do a little cross promotion, you know. So I really enjoy the hell out of it. I just like being able to sit back and just dig into somebody's story, and whether or not I already know them or I don't, I kind of like when I don't know them at all a little bit more, because it really brings out the detective in me. Like, I got to identify what part of this person I think that people are going to be most interested in while I'm talking to them. And then really when I get a nugget of it, I'm like, all right, you know, it's almost like when I was a detective interviewing somebody and I'm like trying to get them to confess. You always look for this theme of what provides them moral justification for having committed the act, because everybody needs that to confess. So if they kept talking about like, you know, well, you know, why would I do that? I'm a dad, you know, I have 3 kids and I love my kids. And I'm like, oh boy, oh, here we go. That's the theme. I know you're a good dad. I'm not saying that. I think that's probably why you broke into this house and stole what you stole, because you've been unemployed for 6 months. You're trying to put food on the table. You're a provider. And even though you knew this was wrong to do, food came first, right? And I may even know that's complete bullshit. The reason he's not working is because he's strung out on Oxycontin, you know. But I need him to have that moral justification to confess and be like, yeah, you're right. I am. As long as you realize I am a good person. Yes, I did the burglary, you know. So I kind of use that when I'm talking to people I don't know at all. Like when I was talking to Mark Weinstein, it was, you know, I would just recognize, oh, this is something people really want to know about. So I would make sure I stuck and dug deeper there. Whereas something else, I'm like, they might not care about that. I just let him mention it and go past it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah.
So then it's entertaining for me because I have this game to play, you know, and it's all about, you know, how well I'm going to play the game. So.
Oh, for sure. That's the fun part about podcasts, especially like when I walk away from like a podcast that like we've done, I'm like, or even like one I've listened to, I'm like, because you feel like a good podcast, I feel like you feel like you're in the room, maybe just on mic, and then like so like you're like, man, I have this thing, and then like the wildest part is like you go talk to somebody and you're like, oh yeah, and then it just like there's like randomly something from that podcast that like is relevant in this conversation, and then it's like, oh yeah, then blah 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 blah, and you're like, oh, it's like learning, but also like just enjoy. You're getting it out of enjoy. I wish school was like that. Basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
If school was like that, I would have like 17 masters.
Right?
Dr.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
I love Mark Maron, right? I love him, and I've never got to meet the guy. Well, I mean, I get to shake hands with him once. Chick McGee from the Bob and Tom Show's friends with him. So, one time he took me to see Mark Maron at Crackers Comedy Club in Indianapolis, and I got introduced and get to shake his hand. But I love him as a podcaster. His WTF changed my life. Him interviewing people. Now, I did think it got a little commercial for a while, and I want to go back and revisit it to see if it's coming back. But when he was really like the biggest thing in podcasting before Joe Rogan took over the world, it got to a point where it felt like I'm a famous guy interviewing people. You're welcome for being on my show. You know what I mean? It felt a little bit like that for a little bit. And that's it. And that's in no way degrading to him. I love him. I'm a huge fan. I think that just naturally probably happens to people, And I'm sure he's probably pulled back now, and he's Mark again. So, but yeah, until that, I mean, I can't wait till the day that happens to me, where people are like, God, he's just gotten so famous now. His interviews have gone to shit.
It's interesting though, because I think that's the whole phenomenon behind like bands that have like a sophomore slump. It's like they're trying to make that what they think people want from the first record.
Yeah.
And then they usually like their third record, if they're a good band, is like phenomenal because they're like, oh, we did the one we wanted. We built our whole life on. Then we built the one we thought you guys wanted based off what you liked. And now we're like, fuck it. We're back to us. Like,
yeah. I mean,
we're better.
You end up almost, being a cartoon of yourself, and people can start to feel it when that happens, I think, It happened with me a little bit when I worked for the Pat McAfee show because I wasn't a big sports guy like the rest of them, I mean, I love sports. I love to play sports. I like to casually watch it while I'm drinking beer and wings. I don't really pay attention, in depth about rosters and coaching trees and shit. I'm just so have that kind of brain. So I was surrounded by all these younger dudes who could work anywhere in sports, and Pat knows, like he really did a great job of picking. Some of them were his friends, but he knew they had those brains, and the others he cultivated from this huge pool of interns, and he's very good at identifying when people have something, you know, and now these guys live and breathe, and they're so passionate about getting on the computer and just reading and studying sports and, and mock drafts and shit like that. And I just didn't have that brain. So I kind of felt like a poser at some point because I was studying enough to pass it off when the ball was handed to me usually, but I wasn't the same as them. And I think a lot of people started to think, well, Andy's a comedian. No, it was hard work for me to even keep up to just being able to not look like a dumbass. That was a lot of work for me, And so then as time went on, I was like, God, I got these other things that are really me. Like I want to be a documentary filmmaker. It's one of the things I've wanted to do forever. And I knew I couldn't do that if I stayed, And I felt so bad about even wanting to leave because I loved everybody so much and loved Pat and owed him so much. And, it's just, if that show would have stayed how it was originally, where it was like 70% just dudes laughing at each other and having a good ass time, and then 30% sports, I probably would have, that's more up my alley. I would have been fine there creatively, I think. But it can't stay there because Pat is an awesome comedian and he's fucking hilarious, but he's also a sports juggernaut. I mean, the guy has a brain that no one else has. Like he doesn't forget a single stat once he hears it or sees it. And he's able to apply all that all that knowledge in a non-nerdy way to where you feel like this is the dude I hang out. This is one of my bros that I hang out with and drink beer with and barbecue in the backyard with, who is just as knowledgeable as Rich Eisen or any of these other people, you know?
Yeah.
And that's special. He had to move toward that. And when he did, you know, it became, you know, 90% sports and 10% about the other peripheral fuck around funny shit, you know? And it is kind of weeded. I weeded myself out, you know. I could have kept doing it probably and hanging on, but I didn't feel comfortable. And my brain doesn't like to be the dumbest guy in the room, and I was the dumbest guy in the room every time I showed up at that place because the topic on the table was sports, you know, and it's not my wheelhouse.
See, I was I mean, I said, well, one, I never noticed as a loyal listener. I never noticed. I would have never guessed. But like, I always wondered when you did exit, was there ever a thought of doing what you're doing now, like, but just under the umbrella of like Pat McAfee, like starting like a crime show side, or was it always like, you know what, I want to put my stamp on it, and this is.
I would have loved to. Obviously, I think it's not built for that. Like we started the true crime podcast under Pat with Pat's blessing, and but it became a situation where I was having to like record everything at like 11 at night till 4 in the morning. Sometimes there was a couple times I didn't even sleep. I just had to work through and do all my recording, and then time for the morning radio show. Just because there's that other shit going on, and there was no private studio for me to lock myself in to do that stuff. You know, I just had to wait till everybody left. And then I would work on it late at night, and I was like, oh, this is quickly going to mean that I'm never going to sleep. I'm never going to see my fiance at the time or have any kind of life. So I knew that I needed to be in a if I wanted to pursue true crime podcasting and documentaries and these other and to be able to do stand-up comedy full time. There was no time for that either. That I was going to have to be in control of my own schedule with podcasting. And that's simply what it was. And it had nothing to do with anything else. I think, you know, people are always, there's little conspiracy theorists out there about the whole situation. And, it was different for everybody that left. Each thing was a very individual thing that happened for its own reason. And for me, had nothing to do with not being happy there or with the people there. You know, they're all fucking. I don't get to talk to them hardly ever now, just because everybody, you know, they get busy in your own shit.
Yeah.
And I hate it, you know, and I don't know if it's uncomfortable on their part, you know, to communicate, but I have a feeling it's just like the rest of us. We probably all think about, oh, I should text Diggs or what, and then they're like, yeah, but I don't know, you know, I don't want to reach out and seem needy or whatever, and it just doesn't happen. It gets away from me, which is unfortunate because, you know, I have a friend that just passed away of a brain tumor. It was one of my best friends in life, and I didn't spend time communicating with him like I used to, and it hit me really hard when I found out he was going to die. And so that always makes me sentimental about wanting to reach out to them. So every now and then I'll reach out to Pat, and every now and then Pat will reach out to me. And it always means a lot, you know. And like Nick Morado, every now and then, and I'll reach out to him or Zito. And I need to just make an effort to reach out to the other guys. And if they don't respond, they don't respond. But at least I'll feel better about it if one of them, God forbid, something happens to them, you know.
Well, I was going to say, suggestion, you should do it for work. Have them on the Here We Go podcast and just talk to them for.
You know, I want to reach out to Pat so bad about doing it, and I'm just going to be brutally honest right here. I would never usually say this on a podcast. I have dilemma about it because I am partially afraid that Pat will just think, well, now this guy who was my friend just wants me to come on to help blow up his new podcast. You know what I mean? Where I have no dilemma about asking like Ms. Pat, who's huge and a friend of mine, like I ask her and I don't have that dilemma. It's weird, but there's something about here's what it is. I think when I first became friends with Pat, people always tried to fucking capitalize on Pat and take advantage of Pat, you know, like come do this for my thing or what. It happened to him all the time. And he was just all the time like, can't I just fucking hang out and have beers with people, you know, without people wanting something from me? So I was always very concerned about that when we first started becoming friends because Pat was a guy, like, if you went over and collabed on something to help write something, he'd be like, oh, here's $500. You throw you cash. And I was always like, no, I don't want it. You know, like, I'm just your friend. I would come do this for any of my friends, you know, that are funny. I love hanging out and collaborating with people. And so I was always real cautious about it. And I saw so many people like that he thought he was just legitimate friends with, then turn around and ask him for something. And I want to talk to him on Here We Go because I want to be on the other side and just interview him like I would anybody that I'm fascinated by.
Yeah.
And that I'm friends with. And dig in and find new things that I probably didn't know even before. I love that. That's why I would want to have Pat on, because he's such an interesting person with such an interesting story. But I'm afraid part of me is afraid that something in his brain's going to go, oh, come on, Todd, why did you have to do that? You know,
Yeah.
like
I totally understand that because I produce a podcast, two podcasts with 3 ex-Colt players, and
right.
I've thought about being like, yeah, maybe I like ask them on, but it's like also it's that weirdness of like, yeah, I don't want you to think like I'm just asking you on for that, but I just like I enjoy conversation. But like Pat does definitely. It is funny. I mean, since we're talking about it, like I have Pat's number. Pat reached out to me about possibly coming on, and then like I never wanted to. I think I've maybe texted him like 10 times total, like, and it's always been usually he'll reach out first, and it's like I don't want to be somebody who bombards somebody. If it means I don't get a job, that's cool. But I'm like, I'm gonna, you know what I can do, and it's up to you. The ball's in your court. Like I'm not gonna be like, hey, please, like I know so many people like are like, you should text him. You should call him. I'm like, no. I'm like, it'll happen.
You should not. You should not. I'll tell you, you should not. He will reach out when he's ready. Yeah, that's just, and that's how he works. Yeah, and it's I'm gonna have to really come to terms. Literally every day I think about this, like, because I don't. Part of me also is afraid that he's going to be like, what a slap in the face, this motherfucker who's supposed to be my friend that I fucking helped get out of police work. He's asked these other people to come on. He's not asked me, you know? So it's quite the dilemma that I struggle with every day. Like, am I going to reach out and fucking ask him or not? I'm assuming I will at some point. But yeah, it's tough. And that's probably just my own brain overthinking things.
No, I think that's a normal reaction. I think, but also I'd love to hear any of them on there. Get Evan on there, not just because he's a Lions fan, but go Lions. But any of them, like Ty or any of them. Like
I'd love to have them all.
I think they all have their. I think that's the thing that everybody has their own like backstory, and it's like it's interesting just to hear about people. So.
Oh yeah, I would love to have them all on. And then there's the dilemma of, well, you're going to ask them before you ask Pat, you know? So.
Right.
We'll figure it out. It's just so I just want to love everybody and be friends with these people that with everybody, but especially these people that I worked so closely with for so long. It was because when you're there, you're family. Definitely. And so I got to work on just saying fuck it. It's okay to just shoot a bullshit text, you know. Yeah. And if they don't respond for their own reason, then that's fine. But I'll work on it. That's my New Year's resolution.
Well, I think a way to kind of like get around that, where like asking one of the other guys before asking Pat, would be ask Bailey. I think Bailey would actually be somebody I'd love to hear on there.
Oh, I should have Bailey on. Yeah.
I don't know if you'd want him to talk about his childhood, but
hey, I don't mind. I've aired his from my side plenty, so it's his turn. Yeah.
Bailey's hilarious. Half the time I don't like. I've had a little interaction with him. I'm like, do I call you Gator? Do I call you Billy? Do I call you Bailey? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, Bailey Butt Cheeks, whatever the latest
the newest one is. Yeah. Well, Todd, man, we definitely appreciate having you on. Jems, was there any other questions you had before we hop into a draft? Or?
Yeah, I kind of like.
Definitely. I have a bunch, but I didn't want.
So I live in Indiana. And you were a state police detective in Indiana for 21 years.
Yep.
Did you do most of your work down south, or did you do some stuff? I'm up in northern. I'm up by South Bend, Notre Dame. But did you do any work up this way?
I was all over because, when I started as a road trooper, which I only did for like 15 months, I was in southern Indiana the whole time. So all my road work occurred south of Indianapolis to the Ohio border. There in the Kentuckiana area. And when I became a detective, I was assigned to the Indianapolis post. So I worked the central counties, Marion, Johnson, Boone, and Shelby County. So I was primarily there. So that was like 6.5 years of shirt and tie detective work. And then when I got into the drug unit, I worked all over the state. I mean, I spent a lot of time in the Indianapolis area because that's where kind of the action was, and I worked a lot with different federal agencies there. But I would be farmed out to go do buys in the middle of the night. Like I think I've been everywhere at some point, either doing surveillance for somebody else's buy or doing the drug buy myself. So I've been in South Bend, I've been in Elkhart, I've been, up near Gary, I've been in Gary, down in Evansville, all over. And then when I was tracking fugitives down by their cell phones there at the end, same story. I mean, we would be in the very southern tip of Indiana in the morning tracking a fugitive and maybe have to drive immediately up to damn near Chicago to track another fugitive that same night. So I was kind of all over, and that's the way I liked it. I originally wanted to be just a big city copper because I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Just, at minimum, like Indianapolis Police Department, or, in my mind, working in Dallas or even a bigger city would be awesome. But I think I like how my career went because the state police in Indiana is full service. It's not just highway patrol. They have a whole investigative component, which I spent my entire career in. And I got to go around usually where smaller agencies needed more resources. That's why they would call the state police usually, They have their own undercover people or, people to work drug cases, or they definitely couldn't do wiretaps or anything, that required that much money and that much equipment, or putting a tracker on a covert tracker on the bottom of a car so they can follow it around for a month. So we would go do all that secret, secret squirrel stuff for them. And it feels good to come in and help a smaller agency, and because I never looked down. Like, some of the best cops I know were cops at, less than a 20-person department. Because they're so well-rounded. But I love going there and just be like, and helping people. It goes back to the same thing we were talking about earlier with comedy, kind of passing it on and helping other people with their shit. I felt that same way in law enforcement. Like, hey, my department has all this cool shit. I'll bring it over and we can use it to help your case, So
on record, Todd McComas, big helper guy.
Yeah, big helper guy.
Now, is the number of state troopers, is it like are there a lot of state troopers, or are they kind of undermanned? Because I know, like, I'm a volunteer fireman up where I'm at, so part of our coverage area is I-80, the toll road, so we'll get car accidents, and, we'll get paged out 1050 at mile marker, whatever, and we'll get there, and, like, most of the time before we get on scene, since we're volunteer, there's a county cop there. But, like, being on the toll road, that's usually ISP, so I'm like, where the fuck are these guys coming from? And they'll be like, coming from 40 or 50 miles away. So it just seems like maybe they don't have a ton of people, or, like, I guess not strictly on the toll road.
It gets worse every year, I think, for the state police here. It started when I think at full strength, they're a 2,200 person department or something like that. Now, I think I might have my numbers wrong, but I think it's like most of those are sworn officers. But those numbers have dwindled because, for one, police work isn't held in the same regard as it used to be. And people, like, of your guys' generation, they come out with a certain skill set, and you're like, why would I do that for $60,000 a year when I can go do it for a job that pays $80,000 or $90,000 a year, and nobody's going to try to shoot me. That's like some of that's been lost on a younger generation, I think, because of media bias and all this stuff too. Like, it's, there's a lot of young people now that are like, oh, all cops are shitheads and they're evil and they just beat people for no reason that aren't the same color as them and all this stuff. So it's really fallen off. I have a buddy that works in recruiting now and for the state police, and he's having a tough time, like, getting a good pool of candidates to apply for the next academy class. So as people retire, they're not being replaced at the same rate that they used to be. So it used to be, when I first came on, you were on the toll road if you got a flat tire, there was a state trooper there in like 30 seconds. They were just all over because they're not allowed to leave the toll road. They're only supposed to work the toll road. And they have a whole post full of troopers that just work that toll road. And they were everywhere. But now numbers are lower, and I think those toll road troopers are being called out to surrounding areas for other calls and stuff. So
I never really thought of that, but like it's much like, I guess, like, like sports nowadays, kids are like getting so specialized. Like I played every sport growing up, and then like baseball was my thing that I was the best at or whatever. But like it's also what I enjoyed the most. But now it's like oh, my daughter plays AAU basketball, and it's almost so full-time commitment that it's like she's on a winter team, a fall team, like a travel team. Like it's like, and I'm like, man, I want her to be well-rounded, but I guess I never really thought of that as far as like, yeah, if you come out with a skill set, you're probably either going off into another industry, or even probably within the industry, you're probably like skipping a step and going up and doing that.
Exactly. I mean, it's culturally, it's a big change. And it's just like you said, like you used to, your best athlete in school was your quarterback, the highest scorer on your basketball team, and probably, ran every important sprinting event on your track team.
Right.
And now it's like, you got to pick a sport, buddy. You're either going to play basketball, football, or track, and you're not going to do anything else. I don't know. I don't think people are exclusively track anymore, but you get it.
I mean, I'm sure some people are.
Yeah,
those guys that run some like 3.840. You're like, what?
Right.
Like, but then have the coordination to run faster than shit, but also can't put a basketball in a hoop. Like,
right. And I think it's just, and there's a lot more job opportunities out there for just the job market is so different. There's entrepreneurship is a big thing now, like with startups and technology and all this. There's all these cool opportunities for people that wasn't out there before. And it used to be like there was a certain segment of the population, you went to the military and you came out and you became a cop or a fireman. Like you were just covered. Used to, you'd walk into a police department or a fire department, and 80% of the people in there had come there from the military, and now you don't see that anymore. So the military is the same way. People aren't going to the military like they used to. It's just a shift where the smarter we get as a people, we're like, why would I do all that crazy dumb shit? Like, why would I want to put myself in harm's way to make that much when I can make more doing this and I'm safe?
Well, I noticed it a lot as like being a kid of a almost 30-year military member. Like a lot of we always lived on military bases until I was, I guess, probably 18. I mean, I think my dad got out like the year I graduated high school, and literally like every military town, it'd be like you'd have people from like Pittsburgh, from Michigan. It was like the same pockets of places. Like people were like, I got to either get the hell out of there, or there's just nothing going on there.
Right. Well, and you take, all right, so every group that you got now, like I'll take Pat and his group of friends.
Yeah.
So if Pat wouldn't have been so fucking good at, kicking a damn ball, like if he didn't have that soccer track that he could have taken, or obviously he knew I can do this in the NFL and that's where I'll make the most money, so I'll go there. If he didn't have that, he would have ended up a cop or a fireman or in the military. Guaranteed. He has that, and he admires people that were in that industry, and he just has that. And he probably would have been a Navy SEAL or something,
By the way, just the thought of Pat as like
I know, right?
Pulling you over as a cop would you're like, what?
Right. So, and then you look at it, the friends that surround him, Diggs and Nick Morato. No way. That's not their thing. Like, they're awesome. They're hilarious. They have great brains on them themselves, but they were on a track of, making loads of cash doing these working in finance or whatever in the hell. And that was their track. So now in every friend group, there's probably one of the 10 or 12 who maybe has an inclination to do that. And it used to be, I would say, you were half that group was going to do something like that, one of the three, military, fire, or police. And it's just changed. The world's changed. There's nothing wrong with it. We just got to adapt and go from there. But I don't know. I worry about the future of policing. I don't know how it's going to go. And every cop I talked to on 1041 that was a legend in their own right of some sort, it sees all the same changes where officers have a different mindset now, and you're not getting that old school, like especially in the undercover world. It's harder to find undercovers more than ever. Just like those guys from the movie 12 Strong, the Green Berets that we interviewed, said it's harder to find people that will make it as Green Berets. So there's less of that. There's more of a kind of a give up attitude coming out of people now because the world's easier to live in, right? You don't used to like, and it's just natural, and it's not degrading people of the youngest generation here. I'm softer than my grandpa in that regard, right? I mean, my grandpa grew up. You were lucky to make it to 14 years old, if you were an Eastern Kentucky tobacco farmer. And so I'm much softer than he was in that regard. And softer, I'm not using as a bad term. I'm just saying like that amount of grit and wanting to live in miserable conditions and gutting things out is going away. And we have to adapt that. And that's in policing, a lot of the big time crime stuff, you're in that world. And even uniformed police officers today aren't wanting to leap over to that side to live in that world. It's easier where they're at, in street patrol and things like that. So
I was gonna say, does some of that come from like I'm 37, Jems is like 30, so he's much younger. But like I remember a time where like technology wasn't a thing. Like so like my view of the world, even though I was a military brat and I had traveled, like was still very small, but then the internet opened everything up. Like, it doesn't feel strange that if I was like tomorrow, I'll be like, oh, I have this business that I just opened up, and now I'm going to move to Australia. Like,
I mean, no, technology is getting better, and it's getting more of a priority in law enforcement, especially on the investigation side. So now, like in the drug world, everybody quickly wants to go to wiretap now or whatever, without doing all that old school undercover infiltrate, really dig into the case stuff. And when you lose that, you distance yourself from the person on the other side of the fence. They get dehumanized because you don't have that interaction. I always said undercover guys treated criminals better than anyone because you lived amongst them. You spent a lot of time around them. You got to understand them as people, and you had empathy, all these things. So you were more compassionate, even though you were a snake in the grass and they're, oh, surprise, I'm not your friend, I'm a cop. You still had a lot more compassion for them as human beings. And cops are losing that. And I don't know if that has part of what's going on with today with the bad apples that are out there. But I think it might. Like, I think cops aren't out there on the street having human interaction like they used to, because it's too easy to get your work done over a computer now, in a lot of ways. And I think that sucks, a lot of. Yeah,
I can see it. Yeah, it's hard hard to interact with people like on a cellular level when like you almost have a step removal from it.
Yeah, it's easier to distance yourself from and dehumanize the person on the other side with the current practice, with some of the things that you have to your advantage. Now you got to go, it makes solving cases easier, so you got to use it. But I miss that. I don't know. Somebody's going to have to step in and just change the way policing's done and take it back a little bit, which is weird to say because policing in the 50s, you don't want to go back to there. People are way too racist. But if you could take it back to, I don't know, just back to the early 2000s or something, to integrate the way policing was done then, it was actually way more community oriented then than it is now, which is weird to me, because we weren't as good at other things then as we were now. But it was much more a thing to get into your community and get involved and hear what their problems are and shit, and then figure it out from there. Prioritize according to what was most important to your community for you to be working on. That was a much bigger thing in the late 90s and early 2000s than I believe it is today. And so somebody's going to have to grab hold of, that whoever's teaching law enforcement and bring it back to there for a minute, I think.
The being out in the community for police officers or firefighters, I think we're dealing with that in the fireman world, at least the volunteer world, of not having a ton of recruits or people that want to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is we're not doing as much with the community other than, running calls and stuff, but like we're not doing the events like the fireman's ball or anything like we used to, where the community was getting to come in and be like, oh, fire trucks, these are kind of cool. But it's probably could be the same with the cops. I mean, there's a lot of that other bullshit going on with them. But like, where not being out in the community as much, these small kids aren't seeing cops as much unless they're seeing them in a bad tone, so they don't get to see the good side of it, where they're like, I want to grow up to be a police officer.
No, you're exactly right. Like they're cutting these DARE officer programs like crazy. Used to almost every school had a DARE officer, and when you were in 5th grade, you had a class with that DARE officer. He was always in there, school resource officer, whatever you wanted to call them. And for some kids in certain communities, that was the only positive interaction they were ever going to get to have with a police officer, and it meant a lot of them. I've spoken with several people that were in that situation. Were like, I didn't have disrespect for the police because I loved Officer Johnson. He was always good to us. And he was there. He got to know us. If we needed something, we could go talk to him. It humanized police at an early age for people, and all that shit's important. And they've been doing away with that, cutting the fat, He's like, talk about defunding the police. Motherfucker, you've defunded the police about as far as you can. Like as far as taking money, like I know that's not what you mean by the term defunding, but that's what it sounds like. And like,
by the way, whoever branded that did a bad job.
Yeah, you can't cut these budgets any more than you already have. If you want police to be better, you're gonna have to spend more money. More money on training.
The teachers.
Yeah. Let's defund the teachers. Let's cut back funding for education. That's like, it makes no sense. And if they're going to solve the problem, they got to spend more money and spend it more wisely. And I think that's part of it. You got to get cops out there in the community where people can interact with them when it's not them kicking the door down on your house. People that's what sucks between the difference between firemen and police officers. Everybody's happy to see a fireman usually. Because you're going to render me medical aid or you're going to put this fire out.
Right.
And with police officers, usually you meet cops on your very worst day. And it's tough from that position. But police got to do a better job of making sure they put themselves in people's lives when it's not their worst day. And it's not actually work-related. Get back in there with the police athletic league programs and shit like they used to do. Same way with firemen. The more you're in your community and just seen as a regular person who also does this job, the more young people are going to appreciate that job for what it is. And then we got to snuff out these shitheads that are getting on TV, choking people out and stuff, obviously. But.
Yeah. Which would probably help with more funding, proper training, and all.
Right. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. One of the best days in elementary school was when we had a state police officer who'd come in every year and bring us lunch, and that was one of the best days. And actually, there's sort of a funny story with him, and you might actually know it. He was around the same time as you. He might be a little older. I'll tell you his name later, but it had to be like 2013 or 14. He got forced into retirement because his buddy took his cop car when they were out drinking and was driving around his state police vehicle. I don't know if
I've heard this story. Yeah.
Been up, northern Indiana.
Yeah, I mean that story gets around real quick. So yeah, obviously I heard that story.
He used to bring us lunch every year. Nice guy.
Yeah.
Got me out of a speeding ticket once too. So
well, there you go. He made one little mistake, and he's gone. But you're right, man. That's like that. There's no cops aren't showing up with sandwiches for the kids and treats and shit like they used to. And it's easy to forget that stuff and get wrapped up in the, let me look cool with my sleek leather gloves and my shiny fucking shoes and my belt. And make sure I look, I'm going to go to the gym, make sure I'm super cut in this tailored fucking uniform shirt that I had, custom made. So there's actually no creases whatsoever in it. So I can show off this body I've been working on. Like, it's easy to get caught up in that part of law enforcement and looking like Johnny Tactical and having that hardo personality. It gets easy to get wrapped up into that. But they've got to start shifting from that to, no, we're here to be, serviceable members of our community. Like, we should be the people that coach Little League and then throw on our uniform afterward and get in the car and go do our shift. That used to happen. When I grew up, that happened you saw that shit all the time, and it's gone away. It's just gone away.
I think what you said hit it kind of like right on the head on the nail. Is what humanizing, because like even like when you see like the bad stuff happen on TV, it's like cop does this. It's not like Deputy Johnson
Right.
did that. Like it's like
Yeah.
cop. Whereas like you were saying, like with their program, you're like, there's a resource officer at my kid's school. They don't even know their name.
Right.
Like I'm like,
Yeah.
who's the I see it's the same lady. I see her every time I drop you off. Who's that? They're like, I don't know. She's just a cop lady.
See, that's sad, man, because everybody used to know their cop that worked in the school, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. So when you guys, how long have you been doing this podcast?
So this
September?
is episode 12. Yeah, basically the beginning of football season. Our first 5 episodes, since we're both Lions fans,
Yeah.
were sort of basically like Lions focused, and then we rebranded because we realized we talked about the Lions for about 10 minutes, and then we got on these really like tangents of talking about cool things.
Yeah. I think that's a good lesson for podcasters is let what is unique to your relationship with the people on your show just be the background setting. You know what I mean? Like, because that makes you even more interesting, adds another layer to who you are as a show. You know,
Yeah.
if everybody on the show is a Lions fan, but it just kind of sits in the background and gets integrated organically because that's the case. I think you guys learned it on your own. That's good for you. But that's advice I always give. Like I 1041 is primarily about cops and these stories, but when I did a regular, because that's a niche market podcast, when I was on Heartland Radio or whatever, it was just part of who I was in the background, and it would come up from time to time. Like that's a good tool for just making your podcast a little more interesting, I think.
And that's kind of like really, I mean, you kind of hit it perfectly. That's why we mentioned all the different we both have a vast amount of interest, much like yourself. That's probably part of the reason why we enjoy all of your podcasts so much is like who knows what we're going to talk about today, but then like if someone finds it, they might find it from that stem and they might be like that. They might be like, oh, I guess I'll go down this, like we've had a fireman on, like let's go down this fireman podcast. Oh wait, they have like this guy and this guy and this guy. And
right.
Like, and that's kind of our thing. By the way, speaking of random niche things, we are Lions fans. We're also both left-handed. So one of the things we do is always ask our guests what handed they are.
I'm right-handed, and I am so right-handed. I can't do shit with this left hand. Like that's why I had to stop playing basketball my freshman year. Like I had no left hand. I couldn't switch hands. What the fuck? I can't write with it. I can barely point with it. I even look stupid like pointing. My left hand is so useless. It's pathetic. Yeah, and it's all gimped up too because I tore the tendon off wrestling off my pinky, and the surgeon was a hack, and he fucked me all up. So it clicks when I when I make a fist now. So I'm just gonna cut it off one day. I think when I turn 60, I'm just gonna be like, just take it off.
You get a hook.
Yeah, I would rather have a hook for sure.
I was gonna say I don't think we've had a single left-handed guest on other than we're claiming Ryan Niemiller. So because both his brothers are left-handed.
Yeah.
So we're like, you should be left-handed. We're claiming you.
He's probably the most ambidextrous person you could have on your show.
Yeah.
Like both hands are equally either useless or awesome.
I think he referred to himself as no-handed.
No-handed.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But it's very odd. We're a small percentage of the population, and for us to both be Lions fans, so
Yeah, it is weird, right? Like, what percentage of the population is left-handed?
I see anywhere between 8 and 11%.
Isn't that weird?
But I think it's growing because I know back in the day, like if you wrote left-handed, people were like, "Oh, it's the devil," and they like smack your hand and
Yeah.
it's all that kind of stuff.
That's how fucked up we were as a people in history. Like, we would pick out one thing, like, oh, why is that person fucking using his left hand so much? Like, obviously, he's fucking possessed by the devil. He's obviously a witch, you know?
Right,
like,
they probably stoned him back in like Salem.
For real, right?
You're left-handed witch.
I know, absolutely. That's how fucked up we are. Like,
Well, the crazy thing is so they say like every left-handed person, if they're born by themselves, ate their twin in the womb, because the only way left-handed occurs is after the mirror, right? and I was like, that's the dumbest thing ever. But most twins that I know are one's right, one's left-handed.
Really?
So I'm like, maybe
Could be onto something there.
I assume that's probably just because of how they lay in the thing. They have to, they probably are stronger on one side, but
Yeah, it's so weird. And then people that, use they're ambidextrous and it doesn't matter which hand they're using. They're equally skilled with each. That boggles my mind. Like even switch hitting I'm like, how in the fuck do you swing left-handed? Like and right-handed just as well as you do the other. It made no sense to me. Like I don't know if some of us just have partitions in our brain that gets some you guys just got yours unlocked, or what happened.
You need some of that Joe Rogan alpha brain. It unlocks like your left side.
Yeah.
Like,
The switch hitting thing is weird because like I played tennis in high school and stuff, and like I can hit a backhand, which you kind of think would be like batting right-handed, but I look like I've never picked up a baseball bat before in my life if I try to swing right-handed.
Yeah, that's how I am left-handed. And I have a buddy who he plays shortstop, awesome shortstop, right-handed in the field, could only hit left-handed.
I'm the opposite.
Just looked stupid hitting right-handed.
Those people boggle my mind that bat the opposite handed of their dominant hand, especially if you're a lefty and bat right-handed. Like, where did you go wrong?
My T-ball coach, who clearly wasn't a cop, he actually got I think I've told the story. My T-ball coach actually got cuffed on the field. The cops actually arrested him in the middle of a T-ball game. He was too lazy, so he taught everybody to hit right-handed. I was the only left-handed kid on the team, and he just didn't even try. He was like, whatever.
Hilarious. So you field left and you bat right?
Yep. Yeah.
Boy, you got fucked by the baseball gods, didn't you?
Yeah. I did. I totally got fucked. Especially, I had the strongest arm, and I caught. My dad also, because he loves baseball, but he didn't pay attention to the sport like in that capacity. So he caught, and so I wanted to be like my dad. So I was like, I'm gonna catch. So my dad never was like, hey, I just spent like $1 zillion getting you a left-handed catcher's glove. So I just caught all the way up through like my junior year, and I was like, had a 1.8 pop time, boom, 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 and then finally like some college coach was like, you're really good. Like we want to offer you a scholarship. It looks a little weird when you come to the ball, and I was like, oh, and then he was like, you're left-handed. Like
Yeah.
bat right-handed, so they weren't even paying attention. They were just like, "Oh yeah, not a big deal." And then so then they were like, "Okay," and then they were like, "You might want to switch to pitcher." And then luckily, I threw like 91, and then I tore the muscle off my bone twice, and that was the end of my career.
Happens to most of you that throw in the 90s.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad.
So, but yeah, it was interesting. I played shortstop and catcher growing all the way up to about junior year.
That's the thing about being a really good athlete and being a left-handed fielder. Like you can get by through high school, but then nobody in college is gonna be like, you can't play infield, you can't catch. Sorry.
Yeah, it sucks. It's like, man, I'm like, although I tried to argue the catcher one. I was like, hey, coach, I have a 1.8 pop time. I was like, the backup has a 2.5. Like,
right.
It doesn't make. I think that evens out there maybe in the wash.
Yeah, but then he was like, "Yeah, but you're a witch." So
yeah, and then he stoned me.
You were on the East Coast. You got really lucky, Tone.
Yeah, I know, right? Luckily, I was a little further north.
Right.
Might have got me. Oh man, but you played baseball, Todd, right?
Yeah, I played. I was supposed to go play in college, junior college, at Vincent's, and I didn't show up. I was supposed to go there early, like you do, and for camp, and I just didn't show up because my parents had moved to Texas, and I don't know, I just got a wild hair up my ass. I was like, I'm gonna go to Texas, and I'll just get on a junior college team there. And my mom fucked up the that big time league they have there right before. Like the transition from college.
Oh.
I can't remember. Legion ball. And so the Legion team there in Longview, Texas, had tryouts, and I was signed up for it and everything. But my mom gave me the wrong fucking date. So I came a week late to join them in Longview, Texas after I graduated. And so I missed that. And then we called around. I tried to get my old coach, to help me out with recruiting. But, like, you can't even get on a junior college baseball team in Texas unless you were like an All-American somewhere else in the Midwest, So
well, it's weird because junior college for baseball, people don't understand. Like I even talked to like some of the NFL guys, and I'm like, oh yeah, baseball. Like if you go Division I, you have to go 3 years. If you go to junior college, you can come out after one. So
so you had all these amazing players playing, especially in Texas. I mean, come on, it's a different ball game than playing in Indiana. Right. And so I just didn't show up, and that was that. And then I was a guy that always played softball, like tournaments every weekend, for years. And then I remember when I was like 29 years old. My buddy who was an IMPD cop, Indianapolis cop, he called me and he said, he was a really good baseball player, and he said, I'm playing in this adult baseball league here. Do you want to play? You're supposed to be 30, but they said they can waive you. And so it was a 30 and up league. And I was like, that's just going to be ragtag or whatever. And he was like, no, listen, we have like college umpires. It's like legit. And a lot of the guys that are on the team and throughout the league played college ball, and a couple played in the minors. The only rule was you had to have set out. You can't have played in the professional baseball within 2 years of you signing up for the league. So I signed up. And it was awesome. It was so competitive. I mean, we had one pitcher used to pitch for Notre Dame, Eastern Illinois on our team. Like, all these guys, we had a team full of guys that no one had played less than Division I. Like they would win the league every year. They all played at like Alabama and Oklahoma, and some guys had played like AA ball for a while. And it was incredible. And I was like, this is awesome. So I played it, and then the league kind of fell off over the years, got weeded down to less skilled people and less organized, less funding for it. And by the time I was 38, I stopped playing. So I had a good 9-10 year run playing it. And I learned more about baseball then than I ever did growing up or playing in high school, because I played with all these guys that played in college and in the pros. And it was awesome. So I lived, slept, and breathed baseball as far as playing it. But I couldn't watch it on TV.
I'm the same way. Weird. It's tough. It's weird because football and baseball are opposite for me. Like I can only almost watch baseball in person. Football, I almost prefer to watch it on TV.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I love to watch it on TV, and I never played football. I had 1 year, in 8th grade, but I love watching football. But love nothing more than playing baseball, and can't watch an inning on TV.
I would say, you ever play wiffle ball?
Yeah, love wiffle ball.
Jems is a Hall of Fame wiffle ball player.
Are you really?
Yeah, we have a tournament every year. It's in New Carlisle, which is just right outside of South Bend, where there's like 80 teams that come every year, and we've been playing in it since I was probably like 15. And they started a Hall of Fame, and I've been doing it so long I made the cut. We also had a league that I co-founded. I don't do it as much anymore. I'll play in the tournament every year just because it's cool and it's a big thing. But there's a league that's been going on 14 years too. Like,
I played in a tournament, a wiffle ball tournament once. It was indoor, and it had lines up on the back wall. So here was, if you hit it above here, it's a home run. Here it's a double. Is that kind of like that?
Well, this is outside. This is in the middle of July. It's all at an elementary school. All the fields and stuff. They got 6 or 7 baseball fields there, so those are all fields there, and then they put some on the football field. It's cool. It's the end of July. Come on up. It's not that far from you.
Yeah, that's cool. I've never heard of that.
I've played indoor softball. There's a dome in Crown Point, and it's kind of similar to that. You'll have center field's 350 feet, and then left and right field are 240.
Right. Yeah.
So lines on the wall.
I did that once for sure. Yeah.
Dude, those are always weird. Like when you have weird field dimensions, you're like, what are you?
I know. I played in Indianapolis. We have this old, it's almost a historic landmark. It's been around so long, but it was called Metro Sports Complex.
I've played there.
The fences are short distance wise, but they're tall as fuck. So you have to hit a monster shot to actually get it out over the fence. But when you're playing, everybody can hit the fence. You know what I mean? So you're just constantly, as an outfielder, it's so tough because you're just constantly either up against the fence catching balls or catching them off the fence. And it gets kind of crazy. But I loved playing there. They filmed part of A League of Their Own there.
Oh, sweet.
Really? Because that's how old and historic, because, they have the old school signs and shit still up on the fencing. They dressed it up a bit, but yeah, they had several games from that movie filmed there at Metro.
That's way awesome.
Yeah.
What, Jems, do you have any other questions? I was going to segue into a movie.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, all right. Well, speaking of movies, we're gonna end it with our draft. Todd picked before we started. So we're gonna do action stars to go to war with. It's a 5-round draft. So we do a snake draft. We always let our guests pick where they want to pick in order: first, second, and third. Obviously, if you pick first, you get the 6th pick. Second, you get the 5th pick. Third, you get the first wrap. So, where would you like to pick, Todd?
I'm going to start off with Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he was John Rambo for the last 70 years. He's been playing John Rambo. So, and then he spun off into the Expendables. I think he's a natural born leader. And I just respect the fact that he's almost 100 years old now and is still shredded.
He is, I mean, that's ridiculous. And all the movies are still actually very quality.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love him.
Like, usually, like, it's like, I'm okay with, like, a declining quality, but if it's, like, a slight decline, I'm cool. But, like, when it's, like, boom, and it goes, like, that's the problem.
I just enjoy a movie that's not afraid to be what it is. Like, when he makes a Rambo now, he's like, I'm not going to fuck around with a bunch of storyline and try to dress. Like, this is about people exploding and being torn to shreds and cool ass knife fighting scene. Like, this is what this is about. So let's just, it's like the John Wick thing. Like, let's don't pretend that this is anything else other than killing people one after another in the most fascinating way possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
1,000%. That's a great number one pick. I mean, that's probably the MJ of the sport. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Gems, I'm going to give you the 2 pick if that's what you want.
So this is action stars who we'd like to go to war with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So since I wasn't very well prepared for this, I just pulled up the cast of the Expendables. I figured that was a great place to start. And I think and he's one of my favorite actors anyways. I like everything that he's in. I'm going to go with Jason Statham.
Jason Statham.
Oh, yeah. That's a good pick. Good grab.
That's not a bad one, no.
Wait till my 5th pick. I always fuck up the last pick of these drafts.
Dude, this dude took macaroni and cheese as the last pick in a pizza topping.
I like Casey's Pizza.
Oh, man. Well, I'm going to take man, it's a tough one. So I'm going to take, I guess since I got the 3rd and 4th pick, I'm going to go with a movie we mentioned earlier, star of that movie, Bruce Willis.
Oh, good one.
Take Bruce Willis with the 3 pick. He's been in quite a few. He always has a good tagline too, so that seems like it'd be a fun guy to be around with that.
Obviously.
Kind of like a not as crazy. I mean, I guess he does blow shit up and kill a bunch of people too, but I don't think of him. I don't think of him as an action star. I just kind of think of him as a movie star. But I'm gonna take Tom Cruise with the 4th pick.
Oh, no, that's a solid pick. I mean, for one, the guy who has legit physical skills himself. He does all his own stunts.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to, he has helped brainwash tens of thousands of people and ruin their lives. But his movies are fucking awesome. So who cares?
That is true. I mean,
you also can't get stuff off the top shelf at the grocery store, right?
Yeah. I think Sylvester Stallone suffers from that a little bit as well.
Maybe that's what you need to be an action star, though.
Yeah. Sure helps. On
I don't know how tall Statham and Willis are, but I'm sure like they're probably.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Mark Wahlberg. Man, when any cop movie he's in, any fucking war movie, like when he played in Lone Survivor, I mean, come on, this guy, he legitimately trains and becomes proficient to look good in the movie, and he's like. It's a pretty good high-level boxer in his own right. Like he trained with Manny Pacquiao forever. So I think he's a legit badass. I'll take him. Plus,
I like your passion for the action star. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh, I love action.
I was gonna make a joke. You're so passionate. You skipped Jems's 5th pick.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I was supposed to go backward. Yeah, I forgot.
I didn't think about Mark Wahlberg. That's a great.
He wouldn't pick Mark. He picks terrible. He's gonna take like Harrison Ford or something.
Okay.
I like Liam Neeson. I don't know if I would consider him an action star. I guess he fucks people up and steals his kid.
I mean, for the Taken trilogy alone, you have to respect him as an action star.
Isn't that one movie where he fights a wolf? That's that's an action movie.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's done a lot actually. He played the Middle Ages Irish guy, the folk legend guy. That was a pretty bad. It was like pre-Braveheart, but not. I mean, Braveheart changed everything for those kind of movies. But yeah, he was good in that.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad pick though. Liam Neeson would be a. I might just be scared of Liam Neeson though. That guy, he's got like a emotionless face. Like, so So since you took Liam Neeson, then the sixth pick was Mark Wahlberg. Now you're back to you, Todd.
Back to me again. I'm going to go with Chris Pratt. Just because I think I'm going to enjoy him the most just having beers after we go to battle. He's just fucking a cool ass dude to hang out with. And he's kind of emerging a little bit as an action star now. His problem is he's so fucking funny that will he be able to come all the way over to action star? I don't know. Probably have to wait till he's older and people don't want him in movies as much. But I respect the fuck out of some Chris Pratt.
Dude, Chris, that's a low-key great pick.
Yeah, well, that's why like Star-Lord is such a good like for him. In, Guardians of the Galaxy, because he's funny, but then he also kicks ass. I'm
waiting for it because you know how they all do this. They all have this one breakout role, and kind of like Keanu Reeves had it with The Matrix, I think. I'm waiting for the Chris Pratt movie that comes out that's just dark as fuck, and he's like. He kind of did it in this Western. I'll never remember the name of it, but he played a bad guy who was a real bad guy, and it was dark as fuck. And he was really good in it. So I'm waiting for him to be like the hero of a movie where it's just serious and dark as fuck, and he pulls out this badass. You know, he's spent 2 years studying jiu-jitsu and shit to make it look good. He's going to have one of those movies. I can't wait for it.
By the way, Todd, that leads me perfectly into like a way we go off track, and it made me think of comedians who have done that. And I always think of, when I think of like dark movies, I think of that Dane Cook movie, Mr. Brooks.
Oh yeah, with Kevin Costner. I mean, both those guys went way off the beaten path. You know, I love that movie. That's one of Pat McAfee's. Pat McAfee loves that movie.
Oh, really? Dude, yeah. Whenever I think of dark movies, I'm like, that's where I go. I don't know why I think of that movie specifically. Maybe it's because those two, it's such a departure from what they do. But like, I was like, what?
I love that movie so much. That was a great pull from you.
Yeah, dude. That's a. I'll let so you can take him as an action. No, yeah. Here we go. Jeff. Yeah, Jeff.
So with this being to go to war with. Unless I missed it, Todd, when you said Mark Wahlberg, I think mentioning Shooter, which is one of my favorite movies, would have been like an awesome
You're right. Yeah, he plays a good sniper. What can you say, man? The guy. And the thing about him is he probably trained for 6 months as a sniper to be in that movie. He's just one of those guys.
Have you seen his schedule for the day? It's like wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, work out, play like 9 holes of golf in 30 minutes or something. It's just ridiculous.
It's insane. Like I used to watch the Wahlbergs because I'm a big Wahlberg family fan. But like he was going there to see his family. He was in there for something else, but in Boston to do something. But he's there mixing it up with the family, and they show like he would rent his hotel room and then the next 2 adjoining hotel rooms. And he would open them up, like the door, and he would have this team of people haul in this big box trailer, and they would set up a gym in the other 2 areas. One where he could box and do shit like that, and then one where he could weight train.
Like, that's
everywhere
the
he goes.
Level I want to get to.
Incredible.
You don't even have to live in the real world at that point. You're just like,
right.
That's like going to the grocery store and be like, hey, no one can be on the next 2 aisles, okay? I'm going to chop those in a minute.
So for my next pick, I'm scrolling through the list because I'm terrible at this one. But thinking of movies I saw, and Denzel. Denzel is phenomenal.
Love it. All right, you stole that from me, but that's fine. No, the Equalizer movies, Jesus, he's so good.
Yeah, he's good in in everything. He's almost like I bet you he could do really funny comedies too if he really wanted to. I mean, he could probably just do whatever he wanted.
Oh yeah, he used to back in the day. Like he's literally one of those guys that if you look at his body of work, I mean, it's probably unmatched. Like every fucking movie you're in is an epic, like unforgettable movie that lives forever. Like how is that possible? Yeah.
I like the ones from him that aren't like the fan favorites though, because I know that everyone loves like Training Day and stuff like that. But I know it's a bigger movie, but like Man on Fire is like my favorite Denzel.
Dude,
Love that movie.
that's my absolute favorite Denzel
Like,
movie.
I love that movie.
I liked Book of Eli as well, but
yeah, that's a good one,
man, yeah, the one you just said was the best.
Man
for
on
sure.
Fire is great. All right, so I'm gonna go with. He was also mentioned earlier, mostly because I'm a Bill and Ted fan, but I'm gonna go Keanu Reeves.
Ah, damn it! My next one.
That's such a good. Oh man, and it's weird because like another off the wall. I mean, I guess he was doing it back then though. He had like Bill and Ted, but then he also did like Point Break and stuff. So he's just always been that kind of guy. And then I'm gonna wrap it, I guess, with. Damn, I only got 2 picks left, so I'm like, fuck. I'm gonna take. Does Angelina Jolie count as an action star?
Oh yeah, for sure.
According to my Google list, yes.
Yeah.
I was trying to get a woman represented on here. Plus, I think now, like later on in life, she might be able to like get us to peace at war too. So like she's like she could be like her.
There you go. There you go. I like that.
Who are you wrapping that with, Bud?
Oh, okay. I lagged for a minute there. I was like, is he still talking?
I wasn't sure.
So
yeah.
This is going to be sort of off. I don't think it's off the wall that much because he was in a lot of Westerns. And he was also in The Mule, which I know isn't an action movie, but I want to bitch about it for a minute. That movie is based off this old dude from Michigan City, Indiana, that was trafficking cocaine for the cartel or whatever. But that whole fucking movie, they don't mention Michigan City, Indiana. It's like loosely based off of Joliet or something.
Yeah.
I was so mad when I watched that because I was so excited about it. I was like, yes, I have 10 minutes for Michigan City. Like this is such a cool story. Like, and then nothing.
I know.
Eastwood, but you're going to definitely be my 4th pick in this draft.
Clint Eastwood?
Yeah.
I respect it. That's a solid pick. I think I'm going to go, I want to go old from back in the day, but I feel like Sylvester Stallone already does that for me. I'm going to go Randy Couture. Ooh. And I get it. He's never like this star in the movie, but that guy is my favorite MMA fighter of all time. And when he was in the Expendables, like he looked good in action film. So I want him to do more. I actually think he's a pretty good actor. So I'm going to take Randy Couture. He can be my guy in My Little Private War that only gets a few lines, but they're important lines, and he has all the coolest fight scenes.
Have you ever met Randy Couture?
No, never.
Someone. You know who Rocky Dale Davis is? The comedian.
He's a comedian.
I know the name, but I can't picture him.
He was telling. I think he was on some podcast. He was talking about how he loves Randy Couture too. Mm-hmm. You should get him on your podcast. He's hilarious too. He's got a weird backstory. But he was like, we met Randy. They met him at some bar somehow, like him and his girlfriend. And he was like, dude, he's like, I just want to talk about fighting. And he's like wearing a scarf. And then next thing I know, he's just talking to my girl about scarves. And because he has a bunch of scarves. And he's like, I didn't even get my time with him. Like, he's like, it's the first time I've ever fought with my girlfriend over talking to a dude at a bar. And it had nothing to do with him trying to pick her up.
That's hilarious.
But it was so funny. I was like, so I think of that every time Randy Couture comes up.
Yeah.
Rocky Dale Davis is hilarious. I think Sean knows him.
Oh yeah,
I'm pretty sure I've met him before, so I don't know if he came through one of our clubs or if I was at, I don't know, just something that he was also at. But I feel like I've met him, but I should look up a picture and then I would know for sure. But
he's pretty funny. He's a hilarious guy too.
And he responded to a DM.
He did. I think he opened one of his big breaks. He opened for Ralphie May a bunch.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about now.
So,
absolutely, yeah. He's been to Morty's. Okay.
Yeah, and then he. I think he did something with like not Southern Mama. Maybe it was Southern Mama. Maybe yeah. So those are like his. I remember those were two of her bigger ones. But he's funny. He's a funny guy.
Yeah. Cool.
So I guess we're on Todd. We're on your last pick.
Oh man.
Solid roster: Sylvester Stallone, Mark Wahlberg, Chris Pratt, Randy Couture. That's a nice squad.
Are you taking Steven Seagal here, Todd?
Fuck no. The guy, he will be the villain in my movie for sure, and he will get prison raped every other scene. It'll just be cool stuff that my team's doing, and flash to him getting prison raped like over and over by different people.
That's hilarious. He's gonna be the leader of the fallen leader of the other army. That's hilarious.
I think I'm just gonna go. Man, I don't want to go too mainstream. I was trying to go a little more obscure, but yeah, I am gonna go obscure. I'm gonna go Donnie Wahlberg, because people forget him and Band of Brothers. I mean, that guy was the glue that held that whole company together as the first sergeant, and plus that gives me both of the coolest Wahlberg brothers, and I can take the place of their guy that runs the burger franchise, brother.
You could be.
I feel like
you could join the Wahlberg family. Just be Toddy Wahlberg.
Yeah, I think so.
Throw a Y at the end. You're good.
If I just got the chance to hang out with Donnie Wahlberg, I'm convinced we would be best friends. But I will leave that. It's on him at this point.
Hey, well, Donnie Wahlberg, we know you're watching. You and Todd, go do Todd's podcast, and you can become best friends.
Yeah.
Is there a Wahlburgers in Indy?
Yeah. It's either just opened or it's coming real soon. I don't know if COVID fucked it up. I remember the announcement, so it's either here or it'll come after COVID, one or the other. It's going downtown, of course, the first one.
I was gonna say COVID's fucked a lot of shit up. So
yeah. Because I was so excited. I've never even tasted it. People tell me it's very average, but I don't care. I will go there all the time.
Well, I think they go to all the openings, so that's your shot, man. You just got to get to the opening.
Yeah, you're right.
Donnie Wahlberg.
Damn, that would be huge.
That'd be big. Maybe you can perform in the Wahlburgers as Toddy Wahlberg.
Oh, that'd be great. It would be so embarrassing too, because I would pay way less attention to Mark than I would Donnie. I'd be like, I really loved you in Blue Bloods,
dude. I mean, New Kids on the Block was a legit band,
right? Yeah.
They were the first One Direction. I don't care what anyone says.
Oh yeah, they were. Fuck yeah. That whole story too is so amazing. How Donnie Wahlberg, of course, he was rich and famous at a very young age. He paid a bodyguard basically to keep Mark from putting himself in jail by beating the fuck out of people constantly. Like, that's hilarious, and that was the real Johnny Drum. Like, that whole story is amazing.
I mean, that is wild too. You think of like something like that. Like, what happens if Donnie doesn't do that, gets that money, then Mark Wahlberg's never around? How many movies, how many shows, how many everything we don't have?
Oh yeah, he just would have become some delinquent who was in and out of prison constantly because he couldn't control himself. Like, what an amazing story! They should do I know the Entourage is loosely based on it, but I would love to see that as a movie.
Sliding doors, man.
Yeah, let's go.
Make it as a weird documentary, like real film. Like,
yeah, there you go.
He was kind of in trouble before that too, wasn't he? Didn't he? Did he kill somebody or beat somebody?
He blinded a dude. He nearly ripped his eye out of his. But he hit him with something in a bar fight, like either a pool cue or something. Smacked the dude in the side of the head, and I think the guy's permanently blind in that eye from it. So it was like battery with serious bodily injury. So he got locked up for a minute for it.
I would say it sucks for that guy because now he's got to see Mark Wahlberg in all these big time movies, but at least he can't see, I guess.
Right.
This is how my brain works. Also, since we're already off track, we're going to extra off track. If you're swinging a pool cue at somebody, are you holding it by the smaller part or by the bigger part?
Smaller.
It's a good point, but I would go smaller. Yeah, I want that the weighted end, man.
I feel like people are going to grab for the weighted end. Most amateurs, I'm grabbing the smaller part though.
Yeah. I agree. That's like a movie move. You grab it so to break off and just looks good.
Gems. Jason Statham, Liam Neeson, Denzel Washington, Clint Eastwood.
This could be my strongest one yet. Not my strongest pick yet, but my strongest draft yet. Okay. It's a pretty good pick though, I think. I think it was on Friday nights. My mom would bowl, so I'd be over at my grandma's house watching Walker, Texas Ranger.
Oh.
And I mean, he's got a billion jokes about Chuck Norris, so you got to go with Chuck Norris. And he's 100 and could still beat the fuck out of everybody.
Yeah, he's a badass. Love that pick.
That is a legit one. Damn, Chuck Norris is a good one too. That's a solid team. So Jason Statham, Liam Neeson, Denzel Washington, Clint Eastwood, Chuck. I mean, you're a little old, but
it's the classics, man.
That's all.
Got to respect it.
So I always have like one off the wall one, and maybe we just didn't go there, but I think he's an action star. Does Bruce Lee count as an action star?
Fuck yeah.
Okay, I'm taking Bruce.
me?
I'm taking Bruce Lee just to switch it up. Give me a little ground reinforcement. So I got Bruce Willis, Tom Cruise, Keanu Reeves, Angelina Jolie for the Peacemaker, and if they don't want to comply, Bruce Lee kicking people in the face.
I think that's a strong roster. That's a good cast.
That's definitely good. I mean, you can't really go wrong. I mean, 15. I mean, you should be at all top of the top.
I have a TV show recommendation for you guys for everybody. Since we're on the action star theme, a classic action stars, Jean-Claude Van Damme, of course, back in the day, classic. And there's a new series out. I think it's only on Amazon. You just have to look around, but it's called Jean-Claude Van Johnson or something like that. Jean-Claude Van Johnson. And it is so fucking good. It's basically, the premise is Jean-Claude Van Damme plays himself, and it's basically, what if Jean-Claude Van Damme only existed in these dumb action flicks where he was so awesome traveling the world because he was a secret assassin for the CIA, and it was just putting him in that location so he could go do the hit, and then they masked it as he would make this movie because he was a badass karate guy.
That's a great premise.
So it's him making fun of himself the entire time because it's very much satire, like it's parody, and he is so good at making fun of himself and being in this role that it's hysterical. And it has these crazy over-the-top action scenes all over the place because he's really like a hitman in there, but he's kind of over the hill, as what he once was. It's so fucking good. It's crazy and it's bizarre, but it's funny and it's really, really good.
I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Yeah,
I just looked and it is on Prime. It's Amazon Prime.
There you go.
Sweet. Well, I was gonna say I did have my last question since you have a lot of podcasts. I was gonna ask you for because I love podcasts. You clearly love podcasts because you do so many, and you're obviously been in that world. Can we get like 3 recommendations of podcasts we should listen to outside of yours? Because obviously you should go listen to Guns Blazin', Here We Go, and 1041.
Yeah, I'll say comedy wise, I'm really on the Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend.
Okay,
I think episode per episode, it's the most consistently hilarious, and he has great guests, obviously, because he's friends with everybody. But it's a real cool, funny fuck around conversation. Like, they're not afraid to get silly because that's classic Conan, like this bizarre weird shit they do. And then yet there's also really cool conversation, like with these famous people, but at a level where they're friends, so it doesn't sound like famous people talking. Like it's really good. So that's my comedy podcast suggestion. True crime, I'm going to say I really liked Culpable, and I think everybody should get on that train and listen to season 1, and then really, really pay close attention to season 2 because they're bringing in a new person who wasn't involved in season 1 who might be extra awesome.
Definitely, I'll definitely be paying attention to season 2.
Okay, and then my third, let me go. Dan Cummins' podcast, he has fucking 3 now, I think, as well. Of course, there's Time Suck. If you just want some weird, it's a mixture of true crime and just weird extraterrestrial shit or what. And it's the way he does it is so just fucking weird and awesome and funny. Like he creates these own characters that are regulars, but it's him doing the characters within it. It's really funny and the stories are really good. So he manages to tell the story well and expose you to this awesome story, but then he's just a weird fuck who's hilarious at the same time. I love it. And then he has such a diverse. He'll do like Annie Oakley, and then he'll do like some 5 serial killers, and then like a dictator. Yes. It's like great. It's great. Yeah, I love everything about Dan Cummins and his brain, and he represents his brain so well in the Time Suck podcast. He has another one too.
He has one with his wife, right?
Yeah, but he has a new one. You got to deal with Spotify for a brand new one.
I just saw the cover for it. It's like 3 words, and I kept trying to think of it.
Can't wait to listen to it. It's like unbelievable something.
I almost downloaded it the other day because I was like scrolling through and I needed a new podcast, and then I got sidetracked. But yeah, thank you for reminding me because I'm gonna go check that out.
Yeah, I'm gonna subscribe to it because people. I think it's just a Spotify deal, so good for him, man. It probably was a great payout and all that
awesome
stuff. But yeah, anything that Dan Cummins is with, I'm in because it dives into. He's the only person I've seen that successfully accomplished mixing in true crime with funny.
It's called Is We Dumb?
I don't think
with
so.
Dan Cummins and Joe Paisley. He's got another one.
Oh geez, no, I haven't seen that one yet. It's a different one, but
that's the one I almost downloaded the other day. But yeah, he's got a ton. So
yeah,
just search Dan Cummins. I'm sure you'll find it.
Yeah. Just anything that Dan Cummins is involved with, listen to it because he's just great.
And also anything with Todd McComas involved in it, listen to it.
There you go. Thank you.
Be awesome. So, Jems, you got any parting shots?
Todd, do you have any dates coming up that you want to plug or anything?
Sure. I'm in Kansas City, January 29th and 30th. That's the only live stand-up date I have coming up. And I do want people to keep an eye because I'm in the middle of making this documentary, and I'm hoping that it's ready to release by the end of spring. But just keep an eye on it because I think it has a chance to be something kind of special that like industry might pay attention to. Fingers crossed.
Heck yeah.
It's coming along way better than I could have imagined it would. It just started as a small little project with us hacking around for a very specific reason, which I can't reveal. And then it ends up way more awesome than I could have imagined. So if it continues this course, because we're going to shoot for 7 more complete days here in a week in Alabama to wrap up everything in that part of the country. If everything continues on the course that it has been for that 7 days, this thing's it's gonna be really, really cool.
That is awesome. Yeah. Well, when that comes out and you need to do some press, we're here for you, bud.
For sure, absolutely.
And, I was gonna say I did want to since though you said pay attention to that. Where can they find you? Social media, website.
All my social media is at Todd Comedy. Oh nope, sorry, that's my website. At Todd Mccomas. It's just my first name and last name. At Todd Mccomas, and then my website is toddcomedy.com. Everything that I have going on is right there. That's the best switchboard for it all. Toddcomedy.com.
Well, sweet. Well, Jems, were you saying something? I cut you off.
Just that documentary I'm super excited about. When you posted that GoFundMe, you hit me at a good time because I was helping a buddy do this like poker site where we were making some spare money on the side. So I was like, well, fuck it, I'll donate to Todd. So
nice.
Reading about it, I was like, first off, everything you do I think is great anyway. So then I'm like, documentary sounds awesome. And then actually last night at work, I was scrolling through, seeing if I missed any like old episodes of 1041 because that's probably my favorite. And the comedic curveball with Stuart Huff was one I hadn't listened to for some reason, and then I listened to it and I was like, oh, this is where he got the idea for.
It was the catalyst for everything for more than one reason too, which I like. There's a storyline. There's going to be dueling storylines going on with this thing, which I think makes it an extra interesting, stylistically speaking, documentary. But obviously that story that he told about Ann Hodges and getting hit by the meteorite, that's the meat of it. But it's weird. I set this thing in motion though because of that interview on that podcast.
That's awesome.
It was like I wanted to do an experiment with Stuart of sorts, and I don't want to say too much about it because he doesn't even know. Like he doesn't even know all this part. So it'll come out in the end. Yeah.
Man, well, I mean, Todd, thank you for being so gracious with your time. We appreciate it. And anything we can help you with, let us know in the future. We definitely are big fans and of everything you do, from comedy to the true crime to documentaries, you name it. We just huge fans. And absolutely. I'm also, I didn't just show up, but I have a Here We Go old school Heartland ready.
Love it. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you guys listening to all my dumb shit. And this is fun. You got a great podcast here, so it's fun to be on.
Awesome. Thank you, Todd. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and go follow Todd and all that stuff. Probably right below him is going to be all his tags. Just go find him. He's hilarious. So thanks, Todd, again, and we're out.